Welcome back and welcome to tonight's Focus. On Friday, an employee of France's historic telephone operator, France Telecom, threw herself out of a window from her fifth-floor office. Now, this could be dismissed as one tragic incident. Problem is, it's not an isolated case. This suicide is just the latest in a wave of deaths. No less than 23 France Telecom employees have killed themselves over the past year and a half. And we've just received news that the latest attempt came today, Monday, from a female employee in the east of France. Well, this has created shockwaves and anger throughout the country. Unions have been sounding the alarm, asking why is there such a malaise in the company? And they've been calling on the government, who's the biggest shareholder in France Telecom, to take action. France's Labour Minister, Xavier Darcos, is scheduled to meet with the France Telecom CEO tomorrow, Tuesday. So how can we explain this shocking wave of suicides and why so much despair? Unions are saying employees have been under intense pressure due to a company restructuring. We'll be exploring these questions in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at this story.
Another suicide at France Telecom. This 32-year-old employee jumped her death on Friday in Paris. 2 days earlier, a 49-year-old technician in the nearby town of Stewart tried to take his own life by plunging a knife into his stomach. Colleagues say constant restructuring of the business has seen workers crack under the strain.
There's so much pressure as far as figures are concerned. These days, they can ask you to look after many more tasks than you did before. And some people react strangely under pressure.
Unions claim France Telecom employees are being forced to work harder and travel further. They also accuse managers of a terror campaign based on threats of forced retirement and outsourced jobs. Like many of its European counterparts, this former state utility was privatized in the 1990s. Now, some psychologists say the malaise among workers is part of a common pattern as businesses restructure in a bid for efficiency.
For
years, an employee does a perfectly satisfactory job. All of a sudden, a new boss arrives, and suddenly everything changes. The old structures no longer apply.
23 people at France Telecom have taken their own lives in the last 18 months. The company says that's not statistically unusual and that the restructuring will continue. But majority shareholder the French government wants more assurances on helping workers deal with the stress. Labour Minister Xavier Darcos is set to meet France Telecom boss Didier Lombard.
I've asked Xavier Darcos and the president of France Telecom to get the board together so that there's a message from the highest level to workers and so that measures are put into place to show that the problem has been taken on board.
President Nicolas Sarkozy came to power promising to make France's workforce more flexible. But this wave of suicides has shocked the country and reinforced suspicions that change in the workplace is not always for the best.
Well, joining me now to discuss this worrisome wave of suicide, Mr. Bill Stewart. Hello, good evening. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here, except the subject is not that great, is it?
Except it's a sad topic. You're a business professor at the American University of Paris. And on the line from New York is Louis Uchitel, journalist from the New York Times and author of a book titled The Disposable American. We'll be coming to you in a moment. Mr. Stewart, let's begin with you. France Telecom as a company has been undergoing some deep changes over the past decade, not least going from a public company and administration, really, to a private company. Can you tell us about these sweeping changes?
Well, they're the same changes that many other French companies have gone through in the last 20 years, roughly, starting in the mid-1980s. Companies have been privatized, such as most of the banks. Other companies, like France Telecom, which was historically part of the French monopoly post-telephone and telegraph service, have been partially privatized in response to European community directives and a general desire to have a more competitive economy. I think it's very important to remember that people are unfortunately committing suicide in a statistically significant number. Whomever said it's not statistically significant has to go back to my classroom in statistics. But at the BNP Paribas, where my wife works, people are not jumping out of the window, and many of the other firms which are also under great financial and technological and social change. There's a problem at France Telecom, and there's a problem in society.
Now, about this problem in society, precisely, Mr. Uchitel, you've written a book called The Disposable American. It's about the devastating impact that layoff plans and company restructurings can have on employees. And we're looking at a French case here, but it happens in the US as well. That's what you say in your book.